Hey everybody, it's Professor Diffley. This is Philosophy 255, Chapter 7, Lecture Video 4. So here's where we're going to pick up with dual relationships. We had just covered the primary and secondary relationships slide. Here we are with dual relationships. So where is this covered in code? Under section 1.06, subsections A through H, largely, or overview covered, titled, conflicts of interest. What are going to make these conflicts of interest? Remember, you have fiduciary duty to put the client's interests first. So anything that does not put their interest first, particularly your interest or someone close to you, that makes it a conflict of interest. And let's focus on C here, subsection C. Dual or multiple relationships. These occur when social workers relate to clients in more than one relationship, whether professional, social, or business. These can occur simultaneously or consecutively. So that's exactly what the code said. So what does this all mean? So here we're talking about those relationships that blur the line between the professional relationship right here. So we have the professional one, the social one, or a business one. You can mix all three, right? The business here, we're not talking about in the sense of, you do the business of helping them, and seeing them, counseling. We're talking about is you have a client, you're a social worker, a therapist, something like that. You have a client, and you're also, making business deals with them on the side, selling them products, frequenting their business. You're doing something like that. That is what we're looking at here. It's a conflict of interest, and I talked about why that's bad. But again, you have to keep all those separate, right? And here, what we mean by separate is if they're your client if in a helping social work role, therapist role, then you should not get into any of those, the social or business. Just stick with the professional role here. Professional role. If you're in the professional relationship, do not have the social and business one. And again, what does it mean by simultaneously or consecutive? This is talking about once a client, always a client, right? So they were your professional relationship. You stop seeing them a year later. A couple of years later, you connect, and now you have a social or romantic or something else relationship, or you get into a business relationship. That creates dual, multiple conflict of interest there again, because once a client, always a client, and especially under Massachusetts law is what we're going with here on that. So what is a conflict of interest? Brief definition, it is a definition. It occurs when a professional advances her own interest or the interest of others in ways detrimental to the client's interest. So what are we talking about here? This can occur when you have conflicting loyalties or interests, and where these interfere or commingle with the helping relationship there. So, interest as members of a religious group, that would be more here. Say you're one religion and you see it as part of your role in your job that you've taken upon yourself. It's not what the company wants or not what you've been hired for, is to now try to convert people, that sort of thing. That's an extreme, but that is an idea. But any of these, whenever the two of them overlapped or commingle or interfere, that is a conflict of interest. Excuse me, other ones here. So dual role relationships, again, another definition here. This comes from the text. Another situation in which professionals fill more than one role at a time. You got to try to avoid conflict of interest that get in the way of professional discretion and impartiality. Again, because you're trying to protect the clients and not to take unfair advantage of them. Again, we've talked about enough here that even if you're not overtly trying to take advantage of them, clients might be likely to bend to your will or try to please you, and that's what we're trying to avoid here. So common ones, these are common ones. Everybody's, you're members of the same religious group or community, members of the same sub-community. That could be anything, whatever. That first thing people usually, when I ask this in class, usually come up with LGBTQ groups. It could be anything. It could be military. It could be clubs you're in. Anything that's a sub-community, some grouping. Voluntary association you're part of. Children are classmates or attend the same school, right? You guys live in the same town, same district. Community members, neighbors, members in self-help organizations. So just a few things here. For the first four, much of this, there's not much you can do there. Excuse me, no one's asking you to change your religion if your clients are the same, because that could lead to something that's unreasonable. Nor is it necessarily, as I mentioned earlier in another video, does it necessarily mean you have to not attend the same house of worship. That's not what we're saying either. It's only when the maybe the lines are blurred within that, by say going to temple, church, or whatever you go, any functions they have where you and the client are interacting more, and now they think it's in a social setting. You have to again try to avoid those. The same sub communities, again, that's hard to be avoided. As long as I think in most cases, like maybe say an Elks Lodge or something like that, you could usually avoid each other within those at most of the time. But then there might be some other problems. I mean, you could always try to go to a different hall if you're in the part of those groups, like a VFW, something like that. You can try to avoid each other there. None you can do if the kids are in the same schools. I mean, that's just, it might be one thing to say if your client is a teacher in the same school, and now your kid has that teacher, that could be a conflict of interest for everybody involved, and so that should be avoided. But if the kids are in the same school, there's nothing you can really do. It's just, that you shouldn't be telling your kid about your client, and that's obvious, and they should, the client shouldn't be telling, trying to get close to shouldn't be disclosing that either. You can think of all the ways that can go wrong. Community members, no one's asking you to move. I mean, and especially, you're going to say if you work on a military base, for the military, that's going to be impossible. You're going to be around people like that. You're going to be in the same community. If you're in rural areas or even, suburbs, or even in certain neighborhoods, it's going to be hard to not be not be around people. You just kind of try to avoid it. So one in had self-help organizations, which is different here, which this one from real life, I know people this has happened to. This is where it is on the helping professional, social worker, other to remove themselves. So say if you're treating someone in substance abuse, let's say alcoholism, and they go to an AA meeting, and you also have been battling substance abuse, and you're a member of an AA group. If you go in there, and all of a sudden your client is there too, you need to remove yourself. I mean, that is just the way it is. You need to remove yourself from that situation. It's not on the client, it's on you, right? You're supposed to set the boundaries. You shouldn't stay as these are often the reason they're anonymous is so people can speak freely and not without judgment and worry there. And obviously you being in there is a problem. I actually know someone this happened to where they had counseling someone, and they had told them about meetings in the area, and they weren't thinking, they were just going by where the person lived, and they mentioned the same place that they were going for a meeting. When they got there, they were like, crap, because they knew they couldn't be there, and so it was on them to go and find a different meeting. I know people in a lot of professions who will do this, will go to meetings purposefully outside of where they live or where they work, so that they can avoid these conflicts there. So that would be similar to, like, say, self-help is the sub-community. Say if you're a member of a fraternal order or some sort of group like that. Example would be too, maybe say a basketball league or something like that. Say you're on, you shouldn't be on the same team with each other. But say if you're chances you could play each other, I think there's a couple things you do there. One is you try to avoid playing against them if it's possible. You just don't participate those games where you're playing the other one, or just move, move to a different league or to stop playing. Again, don't compare that to a church where, a religion, that's different. Some recreation, you don't have to do it. It's a choice, and you can always find another one. It's not as important as maintaining that relationship with your client there. And again, how do you deal with them? Again, the rules are you should withdraw from them. And this is actually mentioned in the code. When you read those sections that you see, you're supposed to withdraw if possible. These are the ones to be avoided. We've talked about them. Sexual and romantic at the top, bartering, buying, endorsing, socializing. Exceptions, again, if you're at the same fundraiser, same church, something like that, you could, or if you're both in the same restaurant, you don't have to knowledge each other, don't have to hang out with each other, that sort of thing. It's not saying you shouldn't hang out and say you have to leave a restaurant or something every time you see someone who might be a client. That's going to be hard. We live in a city, and I teach here, and it's unavoidable. Sometimes you go out and you're going to see past students, people from campus, people you work with, things like that. It'd be too much of a burden to ask people just to always avoid each other out in public like that. That's those are those types of exceptions. Again, as long as you could be in the same place, but as long as there's no private information, and you don't have to sit at the same table with each other, sort of thing. That's what we're talking about. Again, sexual relations with clients. Let's go back to this because, again, it's in the code multiple times. It's listed in every section. There's 1 through 4, main sections. It's in each one, which tells you that they're serious about this. No circumstances with current clients. And again, as I said, define clienthood. This is always. These relations are going to be exploitive because you have power over each other. There's other reasons, the psychology of it, right, is that you're a helper, you have something for them. This can be very, very exploitive. Maybe the client thinks they can't say no. If they rebuff your advances, that you'll harm them in some way, or stop being their counselor, these things. Again, there is a power imbalance, as I was saying. And, you can also be compromised. You can be compromised as a result of this. One way is, you have a moment of weakness. You engage in some sort of relationship with the client, then you realize it's wrong. Now they know that. They could hold it, try to blackmail you. They have dirt on you. So, again, that might be an extreme case, but maybe it's not. But this is something to be avoided as well. But again, this, definitely harms your clients in many ways. There's a major gender imbalance with this. 90% of those sexually exploited by helping professionals are women. So it's men preying on women, which most people do not find surprising. Although interesting, this is anecdotal, of the people I've known of who have done this, it's actually been more women who have had this who've crossed this line as social workers than men that I know. But again, that's anecdotal. Obviously, they say it's much higher. So, but you'll see. I would agree there is a gender imbalance. How can it harm the patient's mental and physical health? There are physical impacts of depression or anxiety or PTSD, that sort of thing. It could, hurt the effectiveness of the therapy, right? Because now that line is broken and it's not blurred. It's, you can't really do your job that way. It can also harm the professional, right? We have talked about this: loss of license, civil lawsuits, criminal prosecutions. Again, it's sexual relations with clients in the social work care setting is a crime in all 50 states there. So why does this keep happening then? If you look at page 131, there's a survey there talking about how often this happens. So why? I don't know. I think some people just can't help themselves, and for lack of better words, I'm not really sure. It is a real problem. Maybe it's the intimacy that's created in some of these relationships. I really don't know, but this is, and I'm not sure that anybody knows clearly, but even though this is a problem, and we know, and there's all these prohibitions, it keeps happening. So be very aware of this. Again, you could read of and hear some people who are generally have done nothing wrong in their lives and then get involved in things like this. It's really hard to understand. I can't explain it fully, but nonetheless, just want to draw your attention that this is a significant problem that continues there. And so this will actually be one of your the journal assignment for chapter 7 here is this exemplar 7.1, and I forgot to put a space between the 7 and E there. But you'll see the exemplar on page 131. The instructions here, read it, and then evaluate the 6 responses that come after it. They give you 6 options. And what I want you to do for each individual one is to tell me, is it ethical or unethical? And then explain why. So ethical, why or why not, for each one. And that's all it will take for that. And you'll see the actual journal assignment on Blackboard there. Okay, so we're going to stop there for this one. The last final video, video 5, we will start with this slide here, truth telling and misrepresentation. That will be the final one for chapter 7. All right, thank you.